Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm David Hohn, and let's jump right in.
All right. So I want to get right to it and just talk about the landscape of mentorship, because it's not as cut and dry as I think a lot of people think it is. But before we get into that, I want to talk about why it's so important to have a mentor. And that is, if we could take a moment, each of us, and just tell a key moment in our career, our history here, of a mentor that absolutely like diverted your trajectory and like changed it into where you're at now. I have one, but if you guys want to go, if you guys are chomping at the bit to share yours, go knock yourself out.
Go ahead. If you want to take the lead, I got to think about it. I have little bits of mentorship. I think in the old days, you literally studied under somebody, like the Da Vinci days, back then. You were true apprentice mentor relationship. I think mine has been fractured into small bits. And so let's hear what you got.
Okay. Well, let me tell you first about Mr. Bevington, which was my high school art teacher. Okay. Now, I was the kid who always was drawing in class. I was the kid who you came to if you needed a design for anything, like, oh, we're designing a flyer. Can you draw something up really quick? Or we need a t-shirt design. Can you design the t-shirt? People would see me drawing and they're like, dang, you're really good, Jake. Let's get you to, will you do this thing for me? Will you do a design for my business or whatever? Right. So that was me all through like junior high school. Like everybody, I really was kind of making myself known in the community as the kid who draws. Meet Mr. Bevington, and he was just, maybe he was a good art teacher in that he got students motivated and excited to draw. Did we learn all the fundamentals and proper techniques and stuff? He ran us through our courses and he showed us stuff. Was he a brilliant art teacher in that regard? And a brilliant artist in that regard? Not really. But you never left his class feeling like horrible about your art or horrible or unmotivated about art. And so that was really cool, right? But that's not the key moment that changed my trajectory. Okay. I feel like everything would have been the same had I had a different art teacher, because I was one of those people that was like, I'm doing art no matter what. Even if I'm not in an art class, I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was about 21 and I was like, I'm going to check in with my old high school art teacher. And I went and visited him, and we were like talking about stuff. And I showed him I was at a community college taking art classes, and he's like, what's your plan? I was like, well, I'm going to put together a portfolio here. I'm going to, try to get into Art Center at Pasadena. And like, I want to go, work in movies or animation or something like that. And he's looking through my portfolio and he's like, Jake, I don't tell everybody this, but he's like, I think you're ready right now. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I have a former student of mine who I didn't meet before, but since had become friends with. He said, I have a former student of mine who is currently working at an animation studio, and luck as it would have it, for financial reasons or tax purposes or whatever, Fox decided to open an animation studio, not in LA, but in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was in a suburb of Phoenix, and they established it there. It was Don Bluth, it was Gary Goldman, and they opened up the studio, and they were bringing in people from LA and bringing in people from Ireland and Canada, and just bringing in all these people down to Phoenix to build, to create Anastasia, which was a knockout hit. Like, mm-hmm. It's still a classic to this day. And I come onto the scene for movie number 2 as they're ramping up staffing for that. And this art teacher was like, yeah, this student is working at Fox Animation. You should get in touch with him and see about see if he can help you get your foot in the door at the animation studio. And I was like, okay. He's like, gave me his number. I called him up, and the guy was like super cool and chill. He's like, yeah. We're looking for in-betweeners. He was in the in-betweener department. In-betweeners were essentially the assistants to the assistant of the animator. So the animator would do all the fun drawing. They would hand it over to their assistants, and the assistant animators would do like the second most fun drawings. And then they would hand the rest over to the in-betweeners, and they would do all of the painstaking, it's 24 frames per second. They did the 4 good frames that were fun to draw, and we had to do the 20 frames that were not fun to draw. But it was working in animation, and it was working in animation studio. And so long story short, through that mentor and through this student friend of mine that I had now made friends with, I was able to get a job in the animation studio. And that completely changed my trajectory from going to Art Center at Pasadena. That's even if I was able to get into there, right? Or just piddling around at the community college and, trying to do stuff, trying to get a job at the local newspaper as a cartoonist or whatever, not knowing that newspapers would go extinct in like 2 years, right?
Right.
But essentially put me in the animation industry for the next decade, for 12 years of my life, where I worked on feature films and I worked on commercials, and I got to work with so many talented people, and just put me in contact and build out this network of friends and mentors and people that I was able to help as well. And it was all because of that visit with that teacher that one day.
Awesome.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it speaks to some of the kind of the luck or happenstance aspect of these relationships and the things that can happen in your career as well, but prepared with years and years of, being the guy who can draw.
Well, I do want to clarify that, because it's a good point that you're making, David. And it sounds so specific, like, oh, what if Jake didn't live right there where this thing happened or that thing happened, and he didn't meet this person or that person? I will say this, that most of the people that are successful, I think the act of moving forward makes these things happen no matter where you are, because it may not be that person or that studio, but it would be some person and some studio.
Right.
Or you end up moving.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know what I mean? So I just don't want people to think, well, that's great for him, but he just basically won the lottery because of all these sort of things coming together for him. And it wouldn't happen for me. It will. I mean, these stories are similar among everyone I know. It's just a different group of circumstances.
I guess when I'm talking about the luck aspect, you're right. The luck of working at that studio in the hometown the first time. But yeah, Jake was absolutely gonna work someplace, somewhere at some time. I see the point you're making.
Well, and I've also thought about the alternate universe where Fox Animation Studios never opened in Phoenix, never opened a studio in Phoenix. And eventually I was going to go out to LA by hook or crook, whatever. I was going to go out there. And sometimes I wonder, had I gone out there instead of Fox, which the studio shut down after a few years after I worked there, instead of Fox, what if I got a job at Disney or at DreamWorks? Would I still be at DreamWorks and Disney now directing, a How to Train Your Dragon or a Moana or something like that 25 years later, right? So, I could have had a way more successful career had I stayed on my path that I thought I was on, or is the career that I had, just and actually who's to judge what's successful or whatnot. But I always play those out in my mind. Like, it could have been way more successful. It could have been way less successful, or it could have been the same,
Right. Lee, what do you got?
It's a great question, because like I said, mine's a little bit fractured into different little pieces. I didn't have the one person, and it's interesting because I have been a mentor for groups of students that have gone on to become pro in a very real mentor student kind of way. Anna Davis Court in particular is one that comes to mind. A bunch of them from the Art Institute, because we work so closely with them. So I just didn't have that relationship, but there was some key moments, I guess, from the different people around me. And I guess that's my takeaway is I put myself in an environment where I was constantly surrounded by people working in different ways. And I got to see all of this stuff happening at once. At one point when in my education, I was at Art Center and I had Rob and Christian Clayton were my teachers, and they're very editorial focused. Then moving towards gallery, they had pretty much left illustration at that point and gone fine art gallery. And then Aaron Smith, who was totally gallery, and then people like Christian Schoenwald and David James, who were at DreamWorks, were heavily guiding me in the entertainment track. I minored in sort of in an entertainment, major in illustration, and minor in entertainment and product design. So that was sort of it was two like totally different worlds. So I got to see a few things. I got to see, more importantly than the people that mentored me in the right direction, I sort of got to see where I didn't want to go in a weird way. And I think that's equally valuable. Whenever I'm mentoring students, I tell them to find artists they really like. We've talked about that a bunch on this podcast, but I also recommend finding the ones that you just don't like and then analyzing, why am I responding in this way to this work? What do I not like about it? And that was something that sort of happened to me along the way. Like the Clayton brothers were doing work that I thought was absolutely hideous. I thought the work was ugly. I mean, I didn't like it at all. And they were shown in these galleries. And what seemed to me that I responded to with that group was it was heavily influenced by pop culture, and it seemed very shallow. And so I didn't like the work that they were doing. And I also didn't like the themes that they were sort of diving into, which made me say, I'm not responding to this surface level stuff that they're doing, and the way they're painting. So what way do I want to paint? And so, then I started getting into the idea of doing narrative, because I found it so much deeper in terms of its context. And then I, started seeking out like Marla Frazee and some of these other people who are doing different kind of stuff. Now, did I formally take the children's book class that was offered? Of course not. Why would I do that, since that's what I mainly did? And then Christian Schoenwald and David James, they were absolutely fantastic draftsmen. And I loved the entertainment classes because it really did focus on, hey, let's make a pitch for a movie and let's go ahead and design it up and see what the characters are, what the environments are, and all that stuff. And I loved the work they were doing, especially Christian Schoenwald, who I think is an amazing artist. But the same thing is, once I started looking at what does this job consist of, being a cog in the wheel at a big studio, I just knew wasn't for me. It's not the best spot for me. So while I took away a lot of technique and I took away a lot of storytelling ideas from those two guys, I knew that I wanted to apply it to children's books. So I guess I had just all these little moments with different instructors that became my group meant. If I were to collage all of them together to one person, that's what it would be, this big like transformer.
Right. if they were making
Voltron,
they're making the biopic of Lee White. You know how they often the actual history is so messy, so they'll just take 2 or 3 characters and make them one character.
Oh, that's all right. Well, no, I was thinking of the robot, more in line with Jake. What's all the characters?
Yeah, Voltron.
Voltron.
You got it.
So it's like a Voltron.
The 5 lions.
Yeah.
This is very Gen X right now. Like there's a whole segment where like, whatever.
Well, and then one of the other ones was, and this one was interesting. So I studied at another school. At the same time I was at Art Center, I would take every third term off and just study the figure. And that was at the Art Institute, or Associates of Art in Los Angeles. And then an offshoot of that was this teacher named Jeff Watts, who I just thought he was a prodigy. I mean, the way he could draw was unlike anybody else. I thought it was a master draftsman. And he had started his own atelier, the Watts Atelier. I think it's still going today. I'm not sure. But he was great. And then the people right under him were fantastic, although they were all carbon copy versions of Jeff Watts. That's sort of that's what you have to watch out for in a mentor, is that you become sort of this half version of what they are. You really do got to forge your own path. And that's why I'm glad I had all these different people. But what I learned from the Watts Atelier is, you had this big school, this big machine that's art center. And then you had this big machine. The alternative is Cal Arts. That's where a bunch of people went. And those are big systems, you know what I mean? And this guy's like, hey, I like to draw, and here's what I like to draw. Here's what I like to paint, and here's how I like to teach it. And he opened his own school. And I couldn't help but I was so impressed by that when I went down and studied with him, that this was all just him making this up. It wasn't a system. There's no backing. There's no, there's no HR or different departments and stuff. It's just this guy who's doing it, not unlike what we are doing now. And so he was like the head of the Voltron, I guess, in this system.
Cool. What about you, David?
Oh, let's see. Two that really stood out when you brought up this topic. I'm going to go with the first one. My mom. Oh yeah. She was a really talented artist. She continues to be. She's kind of into landscape painting.
Let me back up just 1 second though. So David got beat up on the last podcast because we were all arguing about stuff, and now David's going for the cookies and milk.
Everyone's gonna be like, I love David.
He likes his mom.
I got my tea.
Not so bad.
I've been practicing the Zen all week. I am on it. It does not matter what crazy, absurd thing Lee says. I will not argue with it.
Oh, I'll bait you. I'll bait you into some kind of argument.
All right.
All right. So David loves his mom.
My mom is the best. So she was very artistic. And I would come home from school and she'd be working on something. Did a lot of stuff in children's theater. Silk screening shirts. I go into my backyard and there would be, I don't know, like a 20 foot by 40 foot, 60 foot piece of canvas as she's painting the backdrop for HMS Pinafore. Like the immortal words of my childhood is stop jiggling the table. She would do all the artwork on the dining room table. And I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And because I was just so into, what she was doing. And I still remember, I remember her teaching me perspective at 8 or 9 years old. And I'm drawing a circle, and she's, I'm drawing like a bottle, and she's like, why don't you look at the top of that bottle just a little more carefully? What shape do you see? And I was like, it looks like an oval. She's like, exactly. And I was just like, mind blowing all the time kind of thing. And so it was just this. So that honestly was a huge thing. So much so that we don't need to get too deep into all that, but there was a bunch of like little art classes that she would take, and I'd be like, can I take it? And one of them was really stupid. But anyway, so that was the one that, all through high school kind of thing, continues to amaze me now. The other one is a classic, college mentorship. They offered an internship at MICA with a group called Studio 6. And this was 6 illustrators who rented kind of a walkout basement of an old mill, in just in the sort of northern part of Baltimore. And it was these 6 illustrators, and they sort of banded together mostly so they could all rent a Xerox copier. Because there was a Xerox copier. This is in the age of where all sketches are being sent by fax. So a Xerox copier was, worth its weight in gold. And there was this one guy, John Kachik. He's continues to work today. Anybody wants to check out his stuff? Kachik. That guy, man. You were mentioning, people become carbon copies. He was like 10 years. He had like 10 years on me in terms of age, and just was really technically talented and just super wise. Like I learned all this business stuff from him, like how to talk to a client, how to go step through a sketch process, how to get photo reference, all this stuff. The one thing was at the end of the summer, because I basically just went in. The internship was a desk in the corner of this studio and everybody just working together. So I basically was just in a studio with other working illustrators, figuring out what this career was going to look like. And I liked the way it looked. It was fantastic. But by the end of it, I was painting pretty much like John. Like it was pretty much a carbon copy. And slowly over time, my work evolved. His work obviously has evolved too from where it was, 20 years ago. But yeah, that's one of those that's the mentorship that really just sticks with me. Like I still think about the stuff that he says. My favorite phrase, and I pass it on to my students, is when you're talking to a client and you've made a choice in an illustration and the client says, why'd you make that choice? Like, why did you do this thing? Why did you compose it this way? Why is the figure in that pose? I still remember him saying, like, you don't have to have the answer, but you better have an answer.
Interesting.
And that just really stuck with me. Like, don't be like, I don't know, I just thought about it. I don't know, it just felt like the right idea. No, bad idea. At least think through, at least in retrospect, fake it. But even more so, what I took from that is think it through beforehand. Have a reason for the choices that you make. So anyway, yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
No, that's really good advice. Well,
I did like thinking back years later, little sentences will come back, as you're working. And I'd love to go over some of those, like a couple, if you guys remember any of these, just like phrases, like, cause that's great, David. I remember Aaron Smith saying, this is a very complicated way of remembering this, but in terms of value, when you're painting, the lightest light in the darks will always be darker than the darkest dark in the lights.
Ooh, I like that one makes my brain hurt just a little bit.
What that means in a nutshell is your light side will always be brighter than the dark side. The second, like people do reflected light in a shadow area, and they bring it up so where it's actually as bright as some areas that are on the light, like it's on a ball, it's as light as the light side on the ball. And if that happens, the ball flattens out. And so he's basically saying, if something's in the shadow, keep it dark. And if something's in the light, keep it light. Don't mix those two up. And so it was just a funny way of saying it. And I don't know why I remember the complicated way, but I think it's because I had to think about it so much. Like, wait a second, dark is dark in the light, and the dark, so complicated. But I remember it all the time when I'm painting, all the time.
That would be a really fun episode, just to kind of give a little thought to that, because you're right, and to kind of step through what they mean and why. Because even as you're talking, I've got like 3 or 4 that are popping into my head, and they're all great. They're all gold. So anyway, cool.
Yeah. So I want to go to the next phase of this and actually define what a mentor is, because David talked about his mom. I talked about a teacher.
I talked about Voltron.
Yeah, we talked about.
All right,
Voltron.
You win, Lee. You win. Oh wait, sorry. Hang on. I'm getting agitated. Tea.
What is in that tea?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's all just whatever the really caffeinated kind of tea is.
That's called coffee.
So a mentor, I want to define it specifically as someone who is ahead of you in some aspect of life, and it could be skill, it could be experience, could be mindset, it could be the career. But regardless of what those is, their example or their guidance helps accelerate your growth. Okay. So what I didn't say in here is that a mentor isn't somebody who is older than you. It isn't somebody who is, a teacher, isn't somebody who is a parent. And that's specifically what I want to point out. They don't have to be older. They don't even have to know that they're your mentor. They could be the formal teacher. They could be also a distant inspiration. It could be just somebody you follow online, right? What makes them a mentor is that you learn from them intentionally. So, and I would say I have a mentor who I follow online, who I've never met, who has no idea I exist, but I I look up to them and I watch them, and I have tried to pattern some of my life after what they're doing. And so I guess to really land this, what is a mentor? A mentor isn't just someone who answers your questions. They model a path, they sharpen your thinking, and they stretch your vision about what is possible. Okay. And that leads me to this this thought from here from Jeff Goins. And he said, it's not who you know, it's who you help that is important. Okay. And so when you think about the different types of mentors, the different types of people in your life, whether they are someone you know, someone you don't know, the real way I think that you build out this network of people around you is not about finding the right person and finding, filling a person to fill this spot and have a person fill that gap, but figuring out how best you can go around helping people of every different strata. And what usually happens in that regard is it's reciprocated, right? You help others, they end up helping you. So before we get into that thought, though, I want to go back. This definition of what a mentor is, do you guys have any comment or any addition to that or any argument with that?
Oh, I have no argument with anything, so I'm going to just sip some tea.
Oh, man, we pulled your teeth
No,
and
that's-
declawed you.
I am broken. No. I actually have no argument because that's a really great. It's a great way of defining a mentor, and even as you said it, I was immediately flashing back to the first 2 or 3 years out of college. Bulletin boards on the internet were a big thing. Did you guys ever participate in the iSpot? Do you even know about that?
I remember it, but I didn't participate.
So it was the chat board section of the 800-pound gorilla of editorial illustration. They created, they created this big website, and I'm sure part of the package was a chat board. And oh man, I just voraciously read everything on that thing because it was all these pro illustrators coming in sharing advice. And so when you were talking about, all the people that they didn't even know they were mentoring me at the time, that is absolutely the case. And I wonder, anyway, that may be part of your conversation. Like I miss that aspect of things, not to say that it doesn't exist, but anyway, I guess maybe I'm just aging out a little bit too. But anyway, love that. And I think it's fantastic. This is a great definition. Lee, disagree.
I disagree.
There we go.
Just on principle.
All right. If you could put a little bit more oomph behind your disagreement, I think it would be.
It's great.
There it is. Thank you. Just a little more curt.
Well, if we're in agreement there, I'll just move on to this part. And then essentially there's 3 roles in your network. All right. So you're sitting here thinking, okay, great. I understand it. A mentor is pivotal. It's important. I should find one. I should figure out who it is. But I want to point out that a network or a mentor is a part of a broader network of people that you need to surround yourself with in order to find success in your life. And I love that essentially in all the examples that we've given here is we've sort of defined these different roles, especially with what Lee was saying. And that is, number one, you do have to have mentors. These are people who are ahead of you. Not necessarily in age, but they're more skilled, they're more experienced, they have the wisdom, they have the career. You also need people alongside of you, and these are your friends. These are your cohorts. These are the people who are in the trenches with you at the same time, and they're going through the same hardships, and they're having the same sort of wins that you're going through. And then the third role is people behind you. You need to have followers, or I would say proteges, or people that you are mentoring, people that you're helping. And if you look at these 3 roles in your network through the lens of it's not who you know, it's who you help, that's going to be the key that sort of unlocks finding friends, finding mentors, finding followers is every day ask yourself, how can I help these people? And people are just going to sort of accumulate around you if you're a person who's giving outward. Okay. Now, well, let's talk about that. How do you get these how do you get these three roles, these three types of people into your network? How have you guys done it? And what's your advice to the listeners of the show?
Well, one of the things is actively taking classes. I mean, most of the people I know come from, I guess one of these versions is just putting yourself in those positions. I put myself in the position of needing a teacher, as did a bunch of people. So that's how I met a lot of people from Art Center that I'm still friends with now. And then both of you guys I know because I put myself in a position of trying to help the people behind me, because that's how I met both of you as teachers, right? So you put yourself in those positions. But one of the things that I want to specifically stress here is due to my son. He's an only child. I think it's easier for kids who have brothers to get out and into stuff, whether it's into trouble or into friends or into good activities.
All the stuff.
You have a partner in crime. I mean, you all know what it means. We all know what it means. If you go into a store, just going with somebody is more comfortable than being by yourself. Well, my son's an only child. And so we have these conversations like, hey man, if you want to expand your friend group, it may mean you putting yourself on the line and being uncomfortable saying, hey, going up to somebody who you think is nice, you've hit it off with, and saying, hey, do you want to go do something? Because he's really nervous about doing that about the fear of rejection, that, it's not right. That's what he always tells me. It's not the right time. He thinks it's going to happen organically, but this specific group of people around him don't do that. They all go home and they play video games. And I'm like, if you want to change that, you have to be the one to do it. Now, where I'm going with that here is I take note of that because just like with clients where I say you put out 10 things, you might get one thing back. It's the same thing with these three groups. You want to teach, you put out 10 things, you might teach one thing, and as a matter of fact, just today, Samantha Cotterill and I have been going back and forth. We have a text thread where she and I are lined up very, very closely with the work we want to do, the area that we're going. Even though her work looks different than mine, a lot of our inspiration is the same. And I thought to myself, Katya Chen would be a fantastic addition to this specific text group just because of some of the sensibilities that she has. So I reached out to Kat this morning and I said, hey, we're doing this text group. It's a very informal crit group. There's formal stuff where it's like, okay, we meet on Tuesday nights and we discuss our dummies. This is not that. This is a social sort of interaction where we're saying, hey, I'm working on this. What do you guys think? Or, hey, check out this fantastic artist, but it's very specifically curated, I guess, in this little group. And I had to reach out to her. I didn't have to, but I wanted to reach out to her and say, hey, you might be a good one. Now, just like when I'm telling my son, she might say, hey, I'm way too busy to do that, or I'm not even interested in doing that. But my point is putting yourself out there, asking people to join you, joining other people is a active and very intentional act. So that's just what I want to say. Because a lot of people think, it just happens, and it doesn't.
No, you have to be sort of steering your own vehicle. You have to be applying your own gas to the pedal, right?
Right.
Really quick, David, did you get invited to this chat?
Oh no.
You guys aren't.
Hang on a second. I'm taking a sip of tea here.
This is a different group. This is the group where we talk about David and Jake.
Seething.
Did you hear what David and Jake
seething.
said?
Can you see it in my left eyebrow? It is.
Why are you twitching? He's twitching.
No, I did not. That being said, what you were talking about, the friends alongside you. I'm completely in sympathy with your son on that one, Lee. I am the worst at getting out. There is a lovely group of the way that I build that particular group is the professional networks. Lee, actually, I met you because of SCBWI. The teaching thing was a offshoot of that, mostly because yours is a personality where you're like, I need something, I've got this goal, can somebody help me out? And that's kind of what ended up happening. So SCBWI for the children's book field is great. There's all kinds of other different ones that I don't pretend to know, but for animation, actually, I wonder if there's an editor. Oh, I guess there is editorial groups that you can join as well. Graphic Artists Guild, things like that. But yeah, that is the best way. But even now, like, there's a lovely group that gets together here in Portland. It's super interesting, super talented, all a bunch of really great people. And they get together, and every time I always have a great time, but 30 minutes before I'm scheduled to go to one of these lovely meetups, I'm like, I'm gonna stay home. This is not, it is an act of will for me to leave the house and go to this place and then get comfortable and then have a great time, and build that network and feel like, I'm not just living in my studio. But yeah, that's a big thing. And if anybody's feeling like you're the only one, oh my goodness, no.
Yeah. I want to point out too that, you don't have to wait for someone to invite you to one of these things. You don't have to, like you can just go to it, or you could start your own. Actually. Like if there's not one of these things happening in your area, you could just throw it out there and say, listen, and there's different message boards. There's different community whatevers, and you might have kind of a rocky start with depending on who shows up and whatnot. But the thing is you always, in every one of these situations, you're going to want to take contact information specifically of the people that you want to stay in touch with and be friends with. And then, you could cast a broad net in your area that just says, hey, creative meetup. And anybody who is a maker, anybody who's a painter, anybody who's a comic artist, whatever, let's get together and let's meet. You do it at the rec center. You do, usually they'll have a space that you can rent or that's free to the community for events like that or whatever. And you get people to show up. The best thing to do though, to get people to really show up is to, you reach out to somebody you want to actually get to know and meet and get in contact with. And you say, hey, here's an idea. I just dawned on me that you could do this just now.
What do you got? You
call them and you say, hey, would you like to speak in an event and share your process? Right.
Yeah.
The email should be titled request for a speaking engagement, and you just be straight up, hey, I can't, we don't have a speaker fee. This is totally community service, but we'd love to have you out. And, I can't guarantee that there'll be, you just be honest, we're trying to get 50 people to come out. Would you be willing to do that? Now, that's how you get the people to come. That's how you get that person to come. And yes, now you're sort of an event organizer. And right now there's a handful of you that are like, nope, this is not for me. I do not do this. I do not want to do this. But if you're also sitting in your home wishing that you had a better network of mentors, friends, and followers, how the heck is that going to happen with you doing the same thing you've been doing, right? So you're going to have to take action. You're going to have to get a little uncomfortable. You're going to have to get out and do that. And usually what happens in these sort of situations is you find the people who are into this kind of thing and who want to help and who want to do this. Number one, you're offering a service, so you're helping people, but then there's other people who want to help, and they can sort of spread the load. They can spread the burden around a little bit. And ultimately you could just hand it off and say, listen, I took this as far as I could take it. If you want to take over it, and then you just become an attendee to one of these things. That's on the bigger scale, but it can be as small as getting 4 people together in a quick group or something like that. Like Lee was saying, do a text thread. But the key thing, and if you think about it, it shifted from how can I, it really is thinking about how can I help versus how can I be helped. As soon as you start thinking, how can I help? How can I make the situation better? What in my skill set, in my talents and abilities can I do, no matter how meager and how small, to make a difference, is ultimately going to attract other people to what you're doing. And a lot of times, it bleeds into everything. Once you start having this, how can I help mindset, to when you post online, instead of posting, hey, here's a thing I just drew, can I get a critique? You can say, here's this thing that I drew, and here is what inspired me by this thing, and here's my thought process. And now you're teaching, and your teaching is helping someone else. And then you're going to get people interested in what you're doing, and they're going to comment, and some of them are going to say, this is really for me, or this is not for me. But as soon as my mindset shifted from trying to always look out for Jake as number one, but trying to see how I can like get together people and put together things and help people and introduce people to other people, man, everything shifted for me. And that's really when, this network of mentors, friends, and followers started to really flesh out and become something real.
Well, that's a perfect segue for an unintentional commercial.
Oh my God.
You're not supposed to say that out loud. Oh, sorry, I just
Here we go.
That. I'm going to work this in where nobody notices that I'm going to talk about SVS, because putting yourself into a group that already exists is, I agree with what Jake's saying 100%, is go after it. Go find the people and do the things that find the path, and then just start reaching out. That's one way to do it for sure. Mm-hmm. And the other way is just joining something that already exists. Mm-hmm. And it's the entire reason we rebuilt our whole platform. And I don't want this to be a hard sell, because it's truly what we wanted we want people to learn art education. That's a base skill set. But the real thing is we want people to make connections. And that's how and why we changed the whole thing. It cost us a fortune to actually rebuild this whole website so it works as a social component first, with a learning platform second. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're doing SVS or not, but that is why we changed our focus from just a wall of classes basically to a true community. And we have a lot of people who in the groups, like I just ran the watercolor workshop in the fall, and a group of like 14 of those people started their own side group outside of me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because they're like, hey, this is fun. They're struggling with the same things. They're dealing with the same principles, because we went over a bunch of them in the watercolor workshop. And so now they're just seeing how each other applies that. And I'm seeing them lift each other up. Oh, you're using this material? You should try this one. Oh, it works great. Thank you so much for the suggestion. I just see this stuff happening in a daily kind of way. And, it's hard to do that if you don't know anybody. There's got to be, the reason people hang out is because there is typically a common interest mixed with a shared experience. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the shared experience, it's hard to reach out to somebody that you've never met and like, hey, I like your work. You want to be in my crit group? They don't know who you are. But these students have seen each other go through it. And so the shared experience part is something that you need to foster for friends and then later maybe followers too. Right. It's hard to do that on your own.
What I love is over at SVS is seeing the students who have just a little bit more experience, a little bit more skill, leaning in and helping the other students who are up and coming, and like being their champions, and like, pointing them into, well, have you ever thought about this? And have you ever looked at that? And just being the ultimately the mentor or the friend that they need at that time in that particular, point of their growth. And seeing that happening has been like hugely satisfying. Like, again, you said, it was not cheap. It did take a lot of time and took a lot of money. It took a lot of effort to get this SVS up and running the way it is now, but it is night and day what it was before. And I think so many people are benefiting from it like they've never had before, which is awesome. You've been along for the ride too, David. Like what's your experience? Sort of outside looking in as one of our you know, you're not in the meetings every day about, well, should we do this or should we do that? We just
God
call
bless. Thank you guys for not.
yeah. We just call you in to do a demo here and there, or to do office hours and whatnot. But what's your experience?
Okay. I mean, yeah, night and day, incredibly valuable. I think you guys have figured out in this updated version the power of the online classes with the thing that most often happens in a brick and mortar school, which is that cohorty quality, people continuing to learn and to help each other beyond the 10-week program, the 16-week program, you know, the 4-week program that you get in that in-person. I think it's fantastic. And exactly that. It's just as much fun to watch people kind of come into their own and watch. Actually, it's been fascinating to watch a number of people who participated in SVS go on to create their own, you know, versions of teaching, whether it's a YouTube channel where they are really leaning into, this is the stuff that I've learned and I want to pass on, or if it's in a kind of just a more informal, somebody who just always steps in with really good advice that, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were the ones getting the advice. And you never learn something so well as when you explain it to someone else.
Oh, for real.
It's that is such a true statement. If you never taught a class, I mean, I've been painting in watercolor forever, and I thought building the watercolor class was going to take me like 3 weeks. Basically, I just need to get the gear together, and oh my gosh, it was like 2 or 3 months of prep and repainting and refilming, and you know.
Same with the graphic novel pro course too that we're doing. It's like I have already taught a comics course for SVS, right? And so I had all the framework for that. I already did workshops, you know, where we zero in on specific, you know, focus on sections of making comics. But then the graphic novel pro, like 10-week course, brought in Sean Crystal to help teach it. And he brings in his experience, you know, and his point of view on doing things. And all of a sudden, like the way we're able to really, like, I would say we go broad, but we also go deep in several sections like we haven't before. And the feedback that we're getting from the students are this is stuff I've never learned before, or I have heard this before, but you teach it in such a way that it's finally accessible to me. And B, the fact that I have never really been able to have this kind of interaction with a professional before has been super helpful for me. And I've never been in a group of people doing the same thing that I'm doing, where we're not competing with each other, but we're all learning from each other. And that's those three things. And it's repeated in Children's Book Pro. It's repeated in Self-Publishing Pro. It's repeated in the studio, the SVS studio, where everybody is learning in a way that is super understandable and build uponable. If that's a word, you can build upon it, each of the layers, but also you get the mentorship, you get the friendship, and you get to have this sort of way to help those people who are a little bit behind you as well. And it's like, I don't know, it's good. If you haven't checked out svslearn.com, go over to the page there, just click on pricing. We've got, you could pay every 6 months or you can pay yearly. And it is, enjoy it while it's at this price, because we keep being told that we're not charging fairly for it. It's too low. So we definitely, this is a good time to join SVS Learn, because we're still up and coming. You want to get in while it's good. So, okay. Is this, have we satisfied this mentorship discussion? Did you guys want to get into response to the last video?
Well, let me. I just want to add one more thing to the mentorship.
Okay.
Because what we basically talked a little bit more about is peer group friend, the second version, and the followers version, which you can anytime you decide to do those two things, they're pretty accessible. But the mentorship, like what does that actually mean? What does that look like for a student saying, okay, I'm in, I want the mentor. What do I do? I mean, do you just take a class? It's not just a teacher, right? We established that. It's more than a teacher, but how do you get that?
Well, okay. Let me give you one example. I'm going to talk about my friend Rachel. And I call her my friend Rachel, even though we met in a mentorship mentee situation, right? So when I worked in Provo, I was right in a college town. So Provo is a college town. It's BYU. You've got tons of students. They have a very healthy arts portion of the school. They have an animation program. They've got an illustration program. They've got fine arts. So if you've ever watched a video or a movie, an animated film, and you've looked at the credits, you're going to see BYU alumni in those credits in key positions too, because they know how to train people and get people jobs. That said, so what you have is this high caliber like group of people attending this school, which is really great if you're looking for assistance as a working illustrator. And so every year the school would reach out to me, or I'd reach out to the school and say, okay, I've got 3 slots available for an assistant. They would send me people, they would get school credit. And then if I wanted to keep them, I would start paying them. So as soon as they're not taking school credit for what they're doing, then they would start working. I would hire them essentially. And I would pay them, we'd figure out, are you working 8 hours a week? Can you give me 20? Can you give me 5? Whatever. And they would pick, days that they could come in. I just killed a mosquito. I got mosquitoes in the house. That's like the worst thing ever. Anyways, so it's just a breach of like this contract we have with the bugs. I will. It's totally fair if you suck my blood outside, but do not suck it in my studio. Anyways, so then, if I'd keep them on, we'd work together. Anyways, there's been a handful of these that I was like, I really like working with you. Do you want to continue working with me? And these people have become my friends. They're not just people who I almost feel like they're my little sister or my little brother, where I just am so invested in what they're doing. But because they've been around me, I'm always able to like help them. Oh, you've got a question about getting your portfolio together. Let's look at it. You've got a question about this job. And going back to Rachel, like her big thing was, I want to break into comics. So every step of the way, she would come to me like, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? Here's what I would do in this situation. Here's how I would handle this interview. Here's how I would handle this presentation. And she's been able to essentially get her dream job in comics, obviously on her own merit, but I can't help but take, a little bit of credit for helping her a little bit along the way. Right. And I'll take whatever credit I could get, because she is a comet right now. And I'm just holding onto her tail as she rockets to the moon. But the key thing there is you treat everyone as if they're your friend, genuinely, and it is just going to be a better relationship for everyone. You're gonna feel more satisfied and gratified and fulfilled. They're gonna feel the same way. They're going to advance in their career based off your understanding and the experience that you've had, and you get to essentially pay it forward because someone has obviously done that for you because you're in a position that you can do it now. And so yeah, I forget how you got me on this thing, but
I was asking how somebody in a position where a person is now, how do they get a mentor? Yeah. That's different than a teacher. Yeah.
So the way that they got in with me was they were not like, Jake, please help me. They were like, Jake, I have 5 extra hours a week. what can I do to help you? Right. And so their thing started with, how can I help? How can I help? And my thing,
Got it.
how can I help you? Right. So the kind of stuff they're doing for me was like flatting comic pages or illustration, which is like the most basic level chore that I have to do in art. Is like, I've done all the hard work. Now I just have to like fill in all of the color spots. And that is something easily you can hand over to an assistant, and they love it because they get to essentially go line by line over the work that you're creating, sort of absorb it that way and see the process that you're doing. So I hired them for flatting. I've hired them for coloring, for manning the shop. So shipping and packing orders. So they get to see that whole side of the business of how do you run an online shop. And, organizing files and prepping things for print and fulfilling Kickstarters and just all of that stuff. And in the meantime, while they're helping me with that, I'm helping them and giving them advice and like, wait, should you be focusing on this thing right now? Or should you put your attention on this thing that's going to get you further? Right. And that's the kind of stuff that they really need, is someone that can like see the entire map and point them, just steer them. No, go this way. All right.
Cool.
So moving on, last time we had David on, we talked about AI, and we all had our little hot takes.
Hold on.
And I think David just wanted to point out that, yes, there is a will-shaped hole in this podcast. And we're trying to fill that hole with David, with Anthony, with Sam. And you can't fill a will-shaped hole with the David, with the Sam or Anthony. You just have to accept that he's gone and he's not coming back.
Oh my God. Did you send him to a farm upstate?
Half the internet thought he died.
I know. I thought that was, the artwork on the cover for that was just beautiful and heartfelt. Really, really great job.
Yeah. No, but did you want to address that at all?
Well, just in that I have in my small way to fill that will-shaped hole. It was mentioned that at least a couple of people missed out on the guy who talked about pickleball. So with that in mind, I was like, oh, you know what? I can talk pickleball. So I thought I would hit you guys up with a couple of facts about pickleball. We'll just every time I'm on, I'll just give you a couple weird ones. And
I need pickleball facts, but
let's see. Here we go. Did you know? Okay, here's the thing. You guys have been around Will. I'm kind of curious. You've been around Will. You guys have been doing the podcast for a long time. Mm-hmm. What do you guys know about pickleball? What have you absorbed over time?
Well, there's no pickle, which is disappointing. What's
that? There's no actual pickle. You're not like whacking a pickle back and forth.
My son and wife got me a pickleball set for Christmas.
So you've played.
Well, I've played a couple times, but the annoying thing for them is that I told them I will never swing that racket and hit that ball without yelling pickle. So the whole time it sounds like pickle.
I love it.
Pickle.
which is better than the sound.
The important thing that I want to add to this,
which means they played once, and that was that.
There you go.
Not necessarily that people want pickleball tips from Will, but I think what I'd like to address is that sometimes we argue, and you guys should know that we love to argue amongst ourselves. Me and Will, me and David, me and Jake. We are, I guess it's always me. Why am I involved in all the arguments? Maybe I'm the common denominator.
I've argued with Will before.
I grew up with a twin, and so I'm super comfortable like debating anything. It can be the smallest trivial thing or something that's actually important. And I'm not emotionally invested, but I think some people hear that and they're like, oh my gosh, they're fighting. But it's all, we are our whole crew, all of us, Anthony and Sam included.
Oh no, did we lose him?
Am I locked? Am I frozen?
He froze on me.
Yeah. You are frozen. Go back like 5 seconds. Okay,
so all of us, Anthony, Sam, David, Will, Jake and I, we're all really good friends. We text each other back and forth, just so you guys know that if we ever get in a disagreement and we're at each other's throats or what sounds like none of us are mad. I mean, never. So please do not construe bouncing ideas back and forth. I mean, we do it all the time, but it's always, friendly. We're always friends. You know what I mean? Even if we totally disagree, we're sort of laughing at each other saying, oh, your point makes no sense, but it's always done in a friendly way, just so people know.
I still remember the great centered composition versus asymmetrical composition debate of 2007.
David and I had it out about whether you should make a centered composition or not.
Through the halls of AI, I mean, it got dramatic. Lee was like shouting out the window at one point.
You will not do a centered composition unless there is very good reason to do it.
Oh, I love that caveat you got there right there, because that was not part of your argument at the beginning.
Oh, it was implied.
Right.
So, Lee, does that mean you're not a big fan of Wes Anderson?
Well, see, therein lies the exception to the rule.
If you're Wes Anderson, you can do it.
What I don't like is when students aren't thinking about composition and then it just ends up in the dead center because it's inadvertent. I mean, you can tell his compositions are so intentional, it's almost uncomfortable, which makes them great.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's unrelenting.
Right. It's not an accident, in other words. Right.
Anyway, that's great.
Yeah.
So
I think it's funny too, going back to that episode, you did not wear your glasses or your hat. And there were comments, Lee, I actually got a text from my dad saying, what's going on with Lee? I didn't recognize him. So what makes you decide whether you're going to wear a hat or glasses or not? Because you're hiding how long your hair's getting.
Oh, it's long. It's very long. This is the front of my hair coming out the back. I mean, it's long. I don't know. There is no rhyme or reason. I mean, maybe when I wake up, did I work out that morning? When did I take a shower? Is pretty much the dictating factor. And if I have to read anything, I'd rather look at the screen without my glasses because I hate the glare. I hate watching people on a podcast where there's glare on their glasses. And I've lost everyone that is anti-glare. So that's the problem.
I would like to point out that this podcast, very calm, but me personally, very calm, very collected. And Lee is wearing a hat and glasses.
Oh,
is there a correlation?
Yeah, maybe a correlation.
I don't know. Maybe I have a real visceral reaction to
you get triggered when he's not wearing
it's like the anti-Samson from the Bible thing. Like the more hair, the more pissed off I get. I have no idea.
There are some other things that people say on the podcast because we get a lot of comments and we love reading you guys' comments. But some of them say like, oh, these guys are all over the place. They, they said this one thing, but then they contradicted themselves. Then this is a one I've been seeing more frequently. There's three of us, so there's going to be three different opinions. So you may hear one of us say one thing and the other person totally say the other. But more importantly, I want people to realize there is nuance. Because you're a fan of one thing doesn't mean you're an enemy of the other thing. Mm-hmm. You can be a fan of two different things at the same time. And that's something I've seen change over the past, 10, 15 years. I noticed it first in my classes when the students were talking about movies and and we're drawing and if they're doing an assignment and they're talking about this movie and I hear people saying, oh, it's the best movie ever made. And then the opposition was saying that is the worst movie ever filmed. They shouldn't have even, done anything. Nobody in the middle. It was either you love it or you hate it. And a lot of times our viewpoints are more nuanced. I like this part of it, but this part could be better. And that means you are riding both sides of the fence. And that happens a lot. And so I want you guys as listeners to be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like go find your own style, but also look at somebody else to give you inspiration. That's sort of an example of two sides of the same thing.
I want to point out another thing too. And that is, this is episode 266. So we've recorded 266 of these. We started this podcast in 2018. So we've been podcasting for 7 years. Now, in that time, everybody and their dog has started a podcast, right? Especially like the thing to do during COVID was start a podcast and learn how to do sourdough bread, right? So,
Oh God, I did.
But what's happened is typically when you start a podcast, you learn it, you figure out how to do it, and if you're really making a go at it, every podcast, every season that you release episodes, you get more polished, you get more dialed in, you get higher production value, you get, you really become way more professional at it. That's not how we do it here. We run a podcast the exact same way we run it in 2018. Okay. Which essentially is the least amount of preparation possible. And throwing around an idea 5 minutes before the podcast is about to start and being like, yeah, you got a take on that. I got a take on that. All right, let's hit record. Boom. And there you go. And so in an age where everything is so polished and so premeditated and so like controlled, what we're trying to offer here is literally you over there drawing at the table while in the same room with your 3 art uncles, like going back and forth about some topic, right? And in that sense, you're not going to get anything polished. You're not going to get too much premeditated. You're just going to get like sort of this raw conversational type of thing that's going to go trail off in some direction sometimes. It's going to get brought back on track sometimes. And at some point, someone's going to be talking about pickleball, right? Because that's part of someone's life. And so that's really, I think, the vibe that we're going for here at 3 Point Perspective. Would you guys agree or disagree with that?
I disagree in principle.
And I will agree with Jake so that I can disagree with Lee. Oh, wait, no, you got the hat on. Sorry. I agree with Lee, so I can. No, I have no idea. Yeah, but I agree with that. Absolutely.
But let me ask you this. I mean, there is a case to say like, hey, let's really make this thing professional. Let's do it in a way that we're grabbing the attention of sponsors and having like high profile sponsors, do the podcast. But then do we lose sort of this off the cuffness that it is? And is that a fair trade-off?
I don't want it to become a class. I like it being a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
As somebody who listened to this podcast for literally years, by the way, voraciously arguing with you just in like on my run. Like I'd be out, I'd be listening to it on a run and I'd be like, half the time I was laughing because it's always very entertaining. But there were definitely some times where I was like,
that's where your pent-up rage comes from.
Oh, years.
But notice he never commented on the YouTube channel. Like
I never watched the YouTube. I didn't even know you guys were doing it for the longest time. Like
that's true. I had a good friend of mine who like we text each other every other day.
Yeah.
And he's like, holy cow, you guys have a YouTube channel. SVS has a YouTube channel. I'm like, you're right, we do.
We talk about it only every single episode, but whatever.
That told me he never listens to the podcast either.
No. So anyway, but I always enjoyed and I continue to enjoy it. And I love it when you guys get Anthony and Sam on. I will never rewatch or listen to one that I'm on. But I love having everybody else on. Thank God you guys have other people. It's always super entertaining. My favorite one actually was the starred review with Sam a couple weeks ago. If anybody hasn't gone back to listen to that one or watch that one, I loved it. It was so good. Super funny, super weird, fantastic.
Yeah. And also super niche. Like,
all right. Yeah.
I noticed that episode did dip a little bit in views on our YouTube channel. And that's because when you go niche, you get less viewers or listeners, but also they're the people who are there for that. They're either big fans of you or they're really interested in the subject matter, which you got to do every once in a while, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go off, because I have all these lovely facts, I do have a thing. From now on, whenever Lee makes an argument that doesn't go over the net, we're going to call that a dink. Because in pickleball, a dink is a soft hit meant to barely go over the net. And I think that's awesome. So if you make a point that I don't think works, I'm just going to say you dinked it.
All right.
If I make a point that does work, I'm going to yell pickle.
If
Pickle.
this really starts happening, I'm just going to see my way out. Bye, guys. You know where to find me. No. I think it's hilarious how devoted to this pickleball bit you are. So,
From now on, there's going to be one pickleball fact every time. I've never played. I'm going to become an expert.
Are we going to get you talking about retirement and Bitcoin as well? Because if we really want to fill that will-shaped hole.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and punt those two topics. Sam can pick one and Anthony can pick the other.
Dink.
Oh!
Yeah, big time dinks.
Only when Lee makes a bad argument.
No, there's one more thing, that the world is crashing. That's every 3 months we get that text from Will that you gotta. It's a link to a YouTube channel where the guy is saying everything is all horrible and the world is crashing.
Yeah, my morning routine is, roll over, grab my phone, check the weather to see how brutally hot this day is going to be.
Good
in
God.
Arizona. Mm-hmm. Which I literally, guys, yesterday I walked the dog and one of my neighbor's swirl cactuses had fallen over. It had withered and died because of
I saw your post.
Yeah. And when I got in my car, you know how it tells you the temperature of just sitting there baking in the sun? 120.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that post was serious with that cactus laying down. That was crazy looking.
Yeah. I don't know if all I know is that a saguaro, you got to do a lot to really kill a saguaro cactus. Those are a very hardy plant. Mm-hmm. And they're also, interesting note, they're state protected. So it's against the law to mistreat a saguaro cactus, and you have to have certain permits to remove them from the environment and put them in your yard. And you have to, that neighbor now has to get a permit to remove that cactus from their yard. It is
wow.
I mean, it is the only place in the world that this plant grows is the Sonora Desert, which starts in Phoenix or a little bit north of Phoenix and goes down to northern Mexico. And that's the only place you're going to find saguaro cactus. So it's a very important part of the ecosystem. It is maybe the coolest looking plant, I think. I love saguaro cactus, so I'm all for it. Let's treat them good. But I was just like, oh man, that poor neighbor, all of the bureaucratic red tape they're gonna have to go through just to remove it from there. You can't go out there and take a chainsaw to it and haul it off. You have to get a permit and get it professionally moved, right? But that said, my morning routine is check the weather and then check the New York Times to see if we've entered World War III yet or not.
Good boy.
And I hate to say it, but that has been my routine for the last 9 years. Okay. Right. Anyways, happy to see. And then once I'm through all that, I have to be like, all right, I'm going to go sit down and draw funny pictures to make people smile. Can I tell you one story related to that?
Bring it on.
So, life update, my daughter got married. And
congratulations on that, by the way. That is huge. Holy moly.
I tell you, it was seriously one of the best days of my life. It was so wonderful because you see all these people that you don't normally see, and they're all coming together, and there are people who are integral to her life and of course part of your life. And, some people coming in from out of town and all that stuff. So it was a great thing. But the night before, 2 nights before, we had a bachelor guys night, right? While she was doing the girls night. And listen, we are such lightweights. We don't drink, we don't party too hard. So what it was bowling and then a campfire, right? Which was good because it was just guys cutting up and being ridiculous and having fun or whatever and telling stories and all that stuff. Well, one of the guys who's my son-in-law's friend, I was leaving. He's like, "Oh, can you give me a ride to my car?" Which we parked at a place. So I'm giving a ride to his car. And this guy, he's a basketball player. He's like 6'7", and he's one of those people you could just tell like they have their act together. And I'm like, "So what are you studying?" He's like, "Oh, actually, I am studying pharmaceutical management." I was like, "Oh, really? What do you want to do with that?" He's like, "Well, I don't want to work for a pharmaceutical company. What I'd really like to do is work for a nonprofit that gets vaccines into third world countries so that we can really stop these pandemics from happening
Yeah.
and things like that." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you are the sweetest person, and you're just so focused on making this world a better place." And I was thinking, please don't let him ask me what I do for a living. Please don't. And my son's in the cartoon. He's studying to be in animation. He's an excellent cartoonist. And essentially what we do all day is draw pretty pictures, right? color and shapes. And I was just waiting for him to ask, like, "What are you doing?" My prepped phrase was going to be, or response was going to be, "Well, just so you know, I believe laughter is the best medicine. And so what I like to do is make little funny books for people." Luckily, it never came to that. And we got to his car and just dropped him off. But I didn't have to, I didn't have to say,
I don't know. I mean, I would
I'm
say,
doing
I would
nothing to
say
change
if you
the
want
world.
to, if you want to
I'm just-
elevate that answer of drawing pretty pictures is the lowest thing you could say. I would say art is a reflection of society. And so I am really showing society itself.
Oh my, wow. These are two wild extremes of that. Oh my goodness.
I basically am the mirror to society for change and self-reflection. So
Yeah, and in Dorian Gray fashion, if you like what you see, then think about yourself. And if you don't care for what you see, oh my goodness.
that's right.
Well, I'm
That's
gonna.
right. You gotta lift it up. You gotta elevate that statement.
I'm
That's what I
maybe a
put
little
on
bit
bank.
more.
That's what I put on bank loans when it says occupation.
Oh, good
It's a
God.
reflection of society.
What would you say in that situation, David?
Oh, well, I'm not sure I can top what Lee just finished with there, but it would be dink. Dink. I got nothing. No, a variation on that, but basically maybe not quite so self-aggrandizing. But actually, the thing is that life is worth living because of art. Do you know what I mean? Like there's that is one of the reasons. I mean, the thing that you remember is the song that mattered to you when your daughter was getting married. You know, it's the book that you read in your mom's lap when you were 4 years old, which I still remember, kind of thing.
Right.
You know, it's those moments that stick with you, and then that really is what art is.
Yeah,
bringing
and that's
to the
that's a
table.
good point because if I look back over my life, I am super grateful for the medical treatments that have made my life livable because I suffer from asthma, and had I been born in 1802, I would have died as an infant because I was hospitalized several times to like get my breathing in check.
Oh wow! Okay.
I would have, absolutely have not made it. So there's that. I'm thankful for the medical advancements that have helped my wife, who's had thyroid problems. For my mom, who had cancer, ultimately died from it, but it extended her life several years where it wouldn't have. Right. I'm thankful for all those things. However, I have literally been brought to tears by a beautiful piece of music. I have been brought to tears by a beautiful story being told and by art. And so in that regard, what really brings me like these emotions and makes me make living life and having life being so worth it is some artist capturing the human condition and distilling it into a handful of notes, a collection of lines, images and word and music and song put together. And that has had just as much impact in my life as the other stuff.
Let's end on that note. Pickle.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I can't beat that.
it's two sides to the same coin. One's the one is make life possible, and the other one is make life worth living. So with that, go make life worth living. Go draw something. No, I'll do our typical takeout if you guys are cool with that.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. SVS or 3-point perspective is made by SVS Learn, or made possible by SVS Learn, which is if you want to be an illustrator, it's where becoming a great illustration starts. You could tell I was doing that one off the cuff and not reading from a script. Your hosts have been Will Terry and shoot.
Oh my God. Wow. Dink.
Your hosts have been Lee White, David Hohn, and I'm Jake Parker. Just a shout out to our team, our SVS team that makes everything possible. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu, our team manager, Preston Smith, our keeper of the curriculum and the community, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now go draw something.